A dog trapped in a freezer by its owner for hours. No one knew the horror Max was facing. When he was finally discovered, the truth of what happened next would leave you shattered. This is the heartbreaking story of betrayal, survival, and a fight for justice that no one saw coming. Max was a dog like any other, playful, loyal, and full of life. His fur was a soft golden brown, and his eyes sparkled with a joy that could light up even the darkest of rooms. He'd been adopted by his owner, Mark, when Max was just a pup. Over the years, the two had formed a bond that many would envy. Mark would often say that Max was more than just a pet. He was family. Mark had always been a quiet man, known to keep to himself, but with Max, he was different. Max was his companion through good times and bad, offering unwavering loyalty in return for a simple pat on the head and a scratch behind the ears. They understood each other without words, as if they shared an unspoken connection. The neighborhood knew Max as the friendly dog who greeted everyone with a wagging tail. But no one could have imagined that behind closed doors, the bond between Mark and Max was about to take a heartbreaking turn. The trust between them would soon be shattered in the most unimaginable way. It was an ordinary afternoon when Mark's mood suddenly shifted. He had been under stress, dealing with personal struggles that weighed heavily on him. Max, as always, tried to comfort him, nudging his hand or resting his head on Mark's lap, hoping to ease his pain. But today, something was different. Mark's patience was thin, and his temper was shorter than usual. Max, sensing the change, kept his distance. He wasn't used to seeing his owner so angry, and he instinctively knew to stay quiet. But as Mark's frustration grew, so did his anger. In a moment of misplaced fury, Mark snapped at Max for something trivial, something that normally wouldn't have even registered. The dog, confused and hurt, backed away, unsure of what had just happened. It was as if the kindness he had known from Mark was suddenly replaced by something cold and unfamiliar. Without warning, Mark stormed into the garage, muttering under his breath. Max, unsure of whether he had done something wrong, followed hesitantly, his ears drooping in confusion. Mark, in his anger, did something unthinkable. He opened the freezer and, with a look of coldness in his eyes, shoved Max inside. The freezer door slammed shut with a loud thud, and Max's frantic barking echoed through the garage. The cold, dark space was terrifying for the dog, but Mark remained silent, leaving Max locked away in that freezing confinement for hours. Max's world turned cold the moment the freezer door slammed shut. The bitter chill seeped through his fur, and his paws slipped on the icy floor as he tried to move. The air was thick with silence, broken only by the soft sound of his frantic breathing. He barked at first, desperately hoping Mark would hear him and let him out. But as time passed, the barks became weaker, swallowed by the oppressive darkness around him. He paced in circles, his claws scraping against the metal floor, trying to find a way out. But the walls of the freezer were relentless, closing in on him. Max could feel his body shivering, his teeth chattering uncontrollably. The once warm, familiar air of the house was now replaced with the frigid cold that numbed his bones. Every few minutes, he would whimper, hoping anyone would come to his rescue. But no one did. Hours dragged on, each minute stretching into what felt like an eternity. Max's movements grew slower, his energy fading as the cold gnawed at his spirit. The freezing darkness became a suffocating weight pressing down on him, and with every passing second, he could feel his strength slipping away. The only thing that kept him going was the hope that Mark would come back and open the door. But as the minutes turned into hours, that hope began to fade. It wasn't until the following evening that Mark's neighbor, Sarah, began to notice something was off. She had seen Mark earlier in the day, but after hearing nothing from him since, she started to worry. She knew Max well. He was always in the yard, playing or following Mark around. But for hours, the house had been eerily silent. Curious, Sarah walked over to check on Mark, knocking gently on the door. There was no answer, but through the window, she noticed Max's leash lying on the ground, tangled by the door. Concerned, she decided to go around to the back of the house. That's when she heard a faint sound coming from the garage. It was the unmistakable sound of scratching, soft at first, then growing louder. Sarah's heart began to race as she hurried to the garage. She pulled open the door and immediately froze. There, In the corner of the cold, dimly lit space was Max, shivering uncontrollably, his eyes wide with panic. He was huddled in the corner of the freezer, his fur matted with ice, his body trembling. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she rushed to open the freezer door. Max staggered out, collapsing into her arms, too weak to stand on his own. It was then that Sarah realized the true horror of what had happened. Sarah wasted no time. She gently cradled Max in her arms, careful not to hurt him further as she rushed him to the car. His body was stiff from the cold, his breathing shallow and labored. His once glossy fur was now matted with frost, and his eyes were clouded with confusion and pain. Sarah could barely hold back her tears as she sped to the nearest veterinary clinic, praying that it wasn't too late to save him. At the clinic, the staff immediately rushed to her side, recognizing the severity of the situation. "He's hypothermic," the vet quickly assessed as he gently examined Max. "We need to warm him up slowly and get fluids into him. His body is in shock." The team worked quickly, placing Max on a warming pad and slowly infusing him with fluids to bring his temperature back to normal. His body trembled as the warmth began to seep back into his limbs. The vet, Dr. Andrews, looked grim as he spoke to Sarah. "We're doing everything we can, but there's a chance he might not make it. His body is weak from the freezing temperatures." Max's eyes fluttered open briefly, and Sarah leaned down, whispering, "You're going to be okay, Max. You're not alone anymore." The next few hours felt like an eternity. Sarah paced the waiting room, her heart heavy with worry. Max had been through so much, but she refused to give up on him. She couldn't imagine a world where he didn't make it. As Max fought for his life in the veterinary clinic, the authorities were already getting involved. Sarah, shaken by the events she had witnessed, made the decision to report what had happened to the local animal cruelty hotline. When the police arrived at Mark's home, they quickly pieced together the facts. Mark had been arrested earlier that day, found at home in a drunken stupor, unaware of the seriousness of his actions. Neighbors reported that they had not seen Max outside all day, but Mark, in his haze, claimed to have forgotten about the dog being locked away. His carelessness, combined with a history of minor offenses, led to his arrest for animal cruelty. The charges were grave, and the case soon drew the attention of the local media. The community was outraged, many of them rallying for Max's justice. Mark's trial would be a difficult and painful process, but it was clear that this wasn't just a one-time mistake. It was an act of cruelty that had forever changed Max's life. As for Max, the legal action was just the beginning. The road to healing, both physical and emotional, would be long. But with Sarah and the support of those who cared for him, he would have a chance at a new life, free from the hands of the man who had betrayed him. Max's story is one of survival, resilience, and hope. He endured unimaginable suffering, but thanks to the kindness of strangers like Sarah and the quick intervention of the veterinary team, he's given a second chance at life. It's heartbreaking to think of the abuse he endured, but it's a reminder that animals rely on us for their care and protection. If this story touched your heart, share it with others to spread awareness about animal cruelty. Together, we can help prevent these tragedies. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories of courage and survival. Stand up for those who can't speak for themselves.